In space, no one can hear you scream. Alien wasn't just a monster movie set in space. It was a production nightmare that nearly killed its cast, traumatized audiences worldwide, and revolutionized horror forever through sheer terror and brilliant deception. Behind the claustrophobic corridors of the Nostromo lay a film set where actors collapsed from heat exhaustion, religious fanatics burned alien models, and Ridley Scott orchestrated one of cinema's most shocking scenes by deliberately lying to his own cast. The chestburster sequence alone caused theater ushers to faint, patrons to vomit en masse, and one executive's wife to lock herself inside her house for days. Today, we're diving deep into 20 weird facts about Alien that reveal the brutal reality behind this sci-fi masterpiece. And stick around for our bonus fact. It involves a revelation so disturbing that even the cast didn't know they were living it. Let's step aboard the Nostromo and discover what really happened when the cameras rolled. The original Kane was diabetic and collapsed on day 1. John Finch, originally cast as Kane, collapsed on the first day of shooting after not taking his insulin and drinking too much Coca-Cola. Scott recalls the actor had gone yellow and couldn't get up. We had to lift him out of the scene. The production ground to a halt. That evening, Scott drove to John Hurt's home in Hampstead. "Do you want to do this?" he asked. "Yeah, I trust you. When do I start?" Hurt replied. "Tomorrow morning, a car will come for you." Sometimes the best casting decisions come from pure desperation. Hurt's vulnerability and theatrical background brought a gravitas to Kane's death that Finch might never have achieved. The diabetic collapse that nearly derailed Alien instead gave us one of cinema's most iconic victim performances. The spacesuits were death traps that hospitalized actors. The spacesuits provided no external ventilation, causing cast members to pass out under studio temperatures that soared above 100 degrees. Producers kept a nurse on standby with oxygen tanks. The nightmare continued until Scott's own children visited the set, tried on the suits, and immediately collapsed. Only then were alterations made. The vapor you see emerging from inside the actors' helmets was aerosol being sprayed from inside. At one point, a mechanism malfunctioned and began choking an actor with spray. The suffocating claustrophobia you see on screen wasn't method acting. It was genuine distress captured on film, turning real suffering into cinematic gold. H.R. Giger's alien egg originally looked too much like female anatomy. When H.R. Giger first rendered the egg, it had a single long slit. The head of the art department immediately laughed, thinking it resembled a vagina. Giger, unfazed by the anatomical implications of his biomechanical nightmares, simply added another slit to create the crosshatch design we know today. This wasn't accidental. Giger's entire artistic philosophy centered on the fusion of sexual and mechanical imagery. The alien life cycle deliberately evokes rape, pregnancy, and birth in the most violating way possible. There's not only the sexual metaphor, but the idea of disease, associate producer Ivor Powell observed. Every aspect of the creature's reproduction cycle was designed to trigger our deepest biological fears about violation and parasitism. The blue laser lights were stolen from The Who's concert setup. The blue laser lights, seen in the egg chamber, were borrowed from British rock band The who had been practicing their light show for an upcoming tour at an adjacent soundstage. The production was so cash-strapped that they scavenged equipment wherever possible. The ethereal, otherworldly lighting that makes the derelict ship's egg chamber so haunting came from rock concert gear. It's a perfect example of how creative constraints force innovative solutions. Those lights weren't designed to illuminate alien horrors. They were meant to accompany "Won't Get Fooled Again." Instead, they became part of cinema's most terrifying discovery sequence, proving that sometimes the best special effects come from pure improvisation and borrowed equipment. Religious fanatics set fire to an alien model, calling it demonic. At one movie premiere, religious fanatics set fire to a model of the alien, claiming it was demonic. This wasn't a mere publicity stunt controversy. Genuine religious groups saw Giger's biomechanical creation as satanic imagery. They weren't entirely wrong. Giger drew heavily from his personal struggles with night terrors, sexual anxiety, and death obsessions. His Necronomicon art book, which convinced Scott to hire him, contained imagery that deliberately evoked religious blasphemy and sexual perversion. The creature's elongated skull, serpentine movement, and reproductive parasitism triggered deep-seated fears about corruption of the sacred human form. When fanatics burned that model, they were responding to exactly what Giger intended: a creature that represents everything unholy about biological existence, transformed into mechanized horror. Veronica Cartwright was genuinely traumatized by the blood blast. The chestburster scene's power comes from authentic shock. They told me I'd get a little blood on my face, and they had an entire jet pointed at me, Cartwright revealed. The script simply read, "This thing emerges," giving actors no preparation for the gore tsunami about to hit them. When the 3-foot jet of blood caught her smack in the kisser, she lunged backwards, tripped over a banquette, and flipped onto the floor. Her genuine terror, confusion, and physical shock became the scene's emotional anchor. Urban legends claim she fainted, but the truth is more interesting. She was simply overwhelmed by the physical assault of warm blood and organic matter. That stumbling, gasping reaction wasn't acting. It was a human being processing genuine trauma in real time. The alien's tendons were made from shredded latex gloves. The tendons in the jaws of the beast were created from shredded latex gloves. This detail perfectly encapsulates the film's obsession with twisted biological horror. Every element of the creature's design reinforces themes of forced reproduction, from its elongated head to its unsettling inner mouth. Using protective materials to create the monster's jaw mechanics adds another layer of biological distortion to an already disturbing creation. The irony is perfect. Safety devices transformed into instruments of aggression. The slimy substance covering the alien was the gel KY jelly. Scott and Giger weren't subtle about their metaphors. They wanted audiences to feel disturbed on a deep, primal level, and they used real-world materials to achieve that visceral response. Yaphet Kotto locked himself away after the chestburster scene. Actor Yaphet Kotto was so traumatized by the chestburster scene that he locked himself in a room and didn't talk to his wife for half a day. This wasn't dramatic prima donna behavior. It was genuine psychological shock. "We were freaked. The actors were all frightened," Kotto later admitted. The scene worked because Scott deliberately kept his cast in the dark about the gore levels they'd witness. It wasn't a game. After that moment, screenwriter Ron Shusett observed, "Kotto's retreat into isolation reveals how the scene affected even seasoned actors who knew something was coming." The combination of real animal organs, massive blood pressure systems, and Scott's secretive direction created an assault on the senses that left psychological scars. The cat Jones was actually 4 different felines. The cat named Jones was actually played by 4 different felines. Animal wranglers needed multiple cats for different behavioral requirements, one for docility, another for alertness, a third for specific actions, and a fourth as backup. The irony is that Jones becomes the film's most important survivor after Ripley. "Would I go back for my dogs? Absolutely," Scott said about Ripley's decision to risk everything for the cat. That emotional logic, protecting the innocent and vulnerable, drives the film's final act. The multiple cats created consistency in an inconsistent world, representing the one pure thing worth saving aboard the Nostromo. Jones becomes the film's emotional anchor precisely because cats, unlike humans, cannot be corrupted by corporate greed or alien infection. Scott psychologically manipulated his actors with moving walls. To heighten the feeling of impending doom, Ridley Scott had crew members push in the set walls a little bit more each day without informing the actors. This wasn't filmmaking, it was psychological warfare. The Nostromo's corridors gradually became more claustrophobic, triggering unconscious anxiety responses in the cast. They couldn't pinpoint why they felt increasingly trapped, but their performances reflected mounting paranoia and spatial fear. Scott understood that great horror comes from environmental pressure, not just monster attacks. By literally squeezing his actors' physical space, he created performances heavy with genuine discomfort. Before we continue with more shocking secrets, go ahead and like and subscribe because we're just getting started with the disturbing truths about this production. The next facts will reveal how the studio nearly killed the film, why the alien appears for only 4 minutes, and the sexual imagery that was too extreme even for an R-rated movie. The original cut was so violent it nearly earned an X rating. The film's original cut was so mercilessly gory that test audiences were repelled, and Scott feared an X rating due to violence. Scenes that were filmed but removed included Brett's corpse covered in maggots, Ripley finding Brett and Dallas cocooned, and Ripley torching Dallas with a flamethrower at his own request. The theatrical version we know is actually the toned-down edit. Scott's original vision was so brutally explicit that it would have been commercial suicide. The deleted footage reveals a movie more interested in showing decomposition, transformation, and death in graphic detail. The opening credits were originally going to be rendered as scraps of flesh and bone, but producers felt this was too graphic. Even the title sequence was designed to assault audiences before the story began. Studio executives thought they had a disaster until Star Wars saved them. 20th Century Fox was originally not very excited about the Alien project until the first Star Wars film became a global blockbuster in 1977. Science fiction had been considered box office poison for years. Fox executives saw Alien as a risky venture until Star Wars proved that audiences craved space-based stories. The success of Lucas's fantasy epic gave Scott's horror nightmare a green light it never would have received otherwise. Producers' first choice to direct was Robert Altman, with Ridley Scott as their fifth choice. The film that would define Scott's career was essentially a backup plan that succeeded through circumstance and Star Wars-generated studio confidence. Sometimes masterpieces emerge from desperate secondary options rather than grand artistic visions. The alien appears for only 4 minutes of screen time. The facehugger and xenomorph monsters only appear in the film for a total of 4 minutes. Scott did this on purpose to intensify the moments in which they actually appear. This restraint creates maximum impact through minimum exposure. Every second of creature visibility becomes precious and terrifying. Scott understood that suggestion and anticipation generate more fear than constant monster presence. The aliens' brief appearances feel monumental because they're rare. The film is completely dialogue-free during the first 6 minutes, establishing atmospheric dread before any character speaks. This combination of visual restraint and prolonged tension building creates a horror experience based on psychological pressure rather than monster action. The 4-minute rule proves that great creatures are more frightening when glimpsed than when showcased. The spaceship's name changed 3 times during production. The spaceship was originally named Snark, then changed to Leviathan until producers finally settled on Nostromo. Each name reflects a different conceptual approach to the story. Snark suggests Lewis Carroll's nonsense creature from The Hunting of the Snark, something mysterious and possibly non-existent. Leviathan evokes biblical sea monsters and maritime horror. Nostromo references Joseph Conrad's novel about colonial exploitation and moral corruption in South America. The final choice perfectly captures the film's themes of corporate exploitation, working-class sacrifice, and the moral emptiness of space commerce. The ship becomes a floating factory where human workers are expendable resources, just like Conrad's miners and dock workers. The name change reflects the script's evolution from a simple monster movie to complex social commentary. Dan O'Bannon got the chestburster idea from his own stomach problems. Screenwriter Dan O'Bannon scripted the scene with the alien bursting from a stomach because he had gastrointestinal problems. The film's most iconic horror moment came from personal medical anxiety. O'Bannon suffered from Crohn's disease, experiencing constant abdominal pain and digestive distress. His own body felt like it contained something alien trying to escape. The chestburster scene transforms personal medical trauma into universal horror. O'Bannon got the idea of the alien laying eggs in the chest from spider wasps, though he was technically incorrect about how they actually reproduce. He thought they laid eggs inside their prey's abdomen, but they actually lay eggs on the surface. The biological inaccuracy doesn't matter. The emotional truth of parasitic violation resonates regardless of scientific precision. Ash's mechanical guts were made from kitchen ingredients. For the close-up of Ash's guts, the special effects team used milk, pasta, and glass marbles. When Ian Holmes' android character gets decapitated, revealing his artificial interior, audiences see ordinary food products transformed into alien technology. The milk represents hydraulic fluids, pasta becomes synthetic organs, and marbles simulate mechanical components. This low-tech approach creates more disturbing imagery than expensive special effects might achieve. The kitchen ingredients make Ash's reveal more viscerally uncomfortable because audiences recognize familiar textures being used in the wrong contexts. It's domestic materials corrupted into horror imagery. The scene works because our brains process the familiar yet wrong combination as fundamentally disturbing. Ordinary grocery items become the building blocks of synthetic life, suggesting that artificial intelligence lurks within mundane consumer products. Percy Edwards got the alien scream perfect on the first take. The newborn alien screech was recorded by animal impersonator Percy Edwards, who got the sound right on the first take. Edwards specialized in creating animal vocalizations for British radio and television. His instant success with the chestburster's cry demonstrates how human vocal cords can produce sounds that trigger primal fear responses. The scream combines elements of bird distress calls, mammalian pain vocalizations, and reptilian hissing. Edwards intuitively understood that the most frightening sounds suggest familiar creatures in extreme distress rather than completely alien noises. That first-take perfection captures something raw and spontaneous that multiple attempts might have diluted. The chestburster's scream works because it sounds like recognizable animal suffering, not science fiction sound design. Edwards created the voice of violation and birth trauma in a single breath. Theater owners cut out the chestburster scene due to vomiting. According to Tom Skerritt, a theater owner in Texas told him that the chest-bursting scene led to so many patrons vomiting in washrooms that he cut it out entirely. Fewer people vomited afterward, but audiences were baffled by the sudden narrative gap. This represents the ultimate practical response to effective horror filmmaking. When your movie makes people physically ill, some exhibitors will simply remove the offending content. At early viewings, moviegoers were so terrified that people in the first row requested to be moved further away from the screen. The film created genuine audience trauma that interfered with normal theater operations. Test screening reactions included spewing in the loo and ushers keeling over. Alien succeeded so completely at generating visceral horror that it became a public health hazard, requiring damage control. The Who's laser lights created the egg chamber's otherworldly atmosphere. Beyond just borrowing equipment, the production's use of The Who's concert lighting represented a broader aesthetic philosophy. Rock concert lighting is designed to create transcendent, otherworldly experiences that transport audiences beyond normal reality. The blue laser lights in the egg chamber serve the same function. They make the derelict ship's interior feel like a sacred space, but one devoted to malevolent reproduction rather than musical celebration. The lights suggest that the eggs are more than simple biological containers. They're artifacts in an alien cathedral dedicated to propagation and death. The borrowed concert equipment accidentally created one of science fiction cinema's most memorable visual moments. Sometimes the most effective special effects come from repurposing technology designed for completely different emotional impacts. Sigourney Weaver beat Meryl Streep for the role that defined her career. Sigourney Weaver won out over other actresses such as Meryl Streep and Kay Lenz for the role of Ripley. This casting decision shaped not just Weaver's career but the entire future of female action heroes. Streep might have brought more classical acting gravitas, but Weaver possessed the physical presence and emotional steel necessary for Ripley's transformation from crew member to survivor to warrior. Her height, voice quality, and natural authority made her believable as someone who could outthink and outlast the perfect killing machine. They pitched the story so that you feel John Hurt's character would be the only true hero amongst us, Weaver noted, referring to how the script misdirected audiences about who would survive. The casting decision that gave us Weaver instead of Streep created the template for countless future female action protagonists. Bonus fact: the alien is never called alien, nor xenomorph, nor even a monster in the film. Instead, it is merely referred to as it. This linguistic choice reflects the crew's psychological inability to categorize what they're facing. By refusing to name the creature, the script maintains its status as something beyond human comprehension. The term xenomorph wouldn't appear until Aliens, and alien exists only in the title and marketing materials. Within the narrative, the creature remains nameless because names imply understanding, classification, and control. Ash refers to it as a perfect killing machine, but even this clinical description focuses on function rather than identity. The refusal to name the creature preserves its status as pure otherness, something so foreign to human experience that language itself fails to contain it. Looking back 45 years later, Alien's legacy rests not just on its groundbreaking effects or iconic creature design, but on its willingness to traumatize audiences through calculated deception and genuine suffering. Scott created a masterpiece by lying to his cast, torturing his actors, and refusing to sanitize the horror he was unleashing. The film succeeds because it treats terror as a physical force that invades the body rather than just the mind. What other classic horror films do you think hid dark secrets behind their production? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and remember, in space, no one can hear you scream, but in a movie theater, everyone definitely can.